Morning.
Hey, Jackie.
Oh, I have a frog in my throat.
You see your photo on LinkedIn yet?
No.
I just posted about International Women's Day, and the closest photo I have to all the women on council is you, me, and Kathy from like 3.5 years ago.
Was it at Vasa when we went to the Vasa?
No, it was at Starbucks. It was when we went on that bus tour. I don't even know why we were, I think maybe the ECDEV bus tour or something like that.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked. I haven't been on my phone yet today.
Yeah. Hey, Ray.
Yeah, well, happy International Women's Day, Natalie.
You as well.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
It is kind of an important day every year. There's just, a little bit more progress.
Yeah, well, and especially in Alberta, I guess the employment rate for women is the lowest it's been since 1984. So,
It's this pandemic.
yeah.
I hope when we come back with this roaring 20s notion that we'll see leaps and bounds around women,
Yeah.
in good positions.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble with my Zoom here, so I might have to log out and come back in. I can't seem to fix what's wrong.
Oh.
Give me a second here.
You can't hear me. Sheena, we're twins today. I've got my red and black going on as well. All right, I'm seeing 9:30. So Ken, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm trying.
So we're going to say attendance is full right now, but Councillor Mackay, if you have to log out and log back in, then we understand what's happening. And we've also got and Mayor Heron is here. We've also got Councillor Hanson and Watkins. So I will call this meeting to order. First thing is an adoption of the agenda. So does anyone have any issues with the agenda as it sits?
There.
Could I get a motion to adopt that? I know you don't like it, Ken, but you're going to make that motion for us?
Yeah, no, now that I'm back live,
Okay.
This is not an avatar. This is really me. That the March 8th, 2021 Community Living or CLSC committee agenda be adopted as presented. Sorry about that.
All those in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Next up is appointments. Do we have anyone here today? No, I don't think so. Okay. So next up is the minutes from February 8th. Nobody saw any issues with those. Can I get a motion to adopt those? And Brittany's put that in the chat. Ken, you want to be the volunteer again? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Thanks. Okay, I'll just read it. That the Community Living Standing Committee minutes of February 8th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. And next up is advisory committee business. So Mr. LaFleur, it says that you're presenting. Is that accurate? Is oh, he is in the meeting. There we are.
Madam Chair, I'm presenting only in the sense that if anyone has any questions as to the process, this is the first time that we've actually put minutes of advisory committees on the CL Community Living Standing Committee agenda in the package. So you'll note, of course, that there are a couple of recommendations coming from two of the advisory committees. So basically, the idea is that if if this committee wishes to adopt or endorse any of them or bring them forward to council, or even bringing forward to council with a recommendation that they not be followed, this is the time to do it.
Okay, thank you. So in there, Councillor Mackay, I see you've got a question. So just in terms of structuring this, do we want to kind of ask just any general questions about the minutes, and then we can go into the Arts Committee recommendation and then the Environment Committee recommendation? Does that work for everybody? I'm seeing one nod, two nod. Okay. So any general questions? Councillor Mackay, go ahead.
Yeah, two general questions. A follow up to your question and maybe clarification from Mr. LaFleur. So, I mean, as you identified, there's two recommendations that form further recommended motions from this committee to go to council. If we approve the minutes, does that automatically mean that that moves forward and we no longer need the discussion?
Through the chair, the minutes are actually not here for your approval. They're here for your information. But when the minutes do include a motion by the advisory committee that essentially is asking for this committee's support to support something to council, it would require a motion from this committee if you wish to support that. So you're not, just to be clear, you're not approving the minutes. Only the advisory committee can approve the minutes. You're receiving them for information for sure. And then what more you do with them depends on what the committee's reaction is to the recommendation out of the standing or out of the advisory committee.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure clarification is that, okay, just that, like you said, we're not approving them per se, but by accepting them, we're not automatically agreeing to the recommendations arising out of the minutes.
No, you're not. Accepting for information doesn't mean that you're agreeing to the course of action proposed by the advisory committee.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. The follow-up question I have in relation to the actual minutes, Chair Joly, is that I noticed that some of the legislative officers identify in the minutes who the chair and vice chair are, and I found that actually beneficial. It's not carried through on all of the committees, however, and perhaps there was a reason for that. Maybe some were just going through elections or nominations, but if going forward, if the minutes could show who the chair of these committees are, it would benefit me at least for the first couple, and then I would then know if that could be possible.
I agree, Councillor, that will happen henceforth.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor Herron?
Thanks. A couple questions. Maybe I've got the CSIC package was fine, but when I get to the arts development, Natalie, question for you. After that meeting, you sent an email, and I don't remember what it said, but there was some, I don't know, miscommunication or conflict. Like you didn't seem happy with it, and I didn't see it in the agenda package or the minutes. So I just wanted you to clarify what that concern was.
Yeah. So. No concern.
Oh, okay.
Basically what it was is the committee was given three options to deal with a policy that didn't match up with the bylaw that we approved last year. And then the committee made a recommendation. So that's done, which is great. And I can speak to that when we talk about that specific recommendation.
And we're not doing that now?
We could get into it if there aren't any more kind of general questions.
Well, the only other general question I had was why is only the agenda package for the Arts Committee included? Because I do have questions about some of the stuff in the EAC recommendation, but the agenda package wasn't there. So if the agenda package was there, I might have just been able to answer them by reading it. But so Mr. LaFleur, I guess, so 5 committees all have minutes, but only one had the agenda package.
Yeah, correct. Through the chair to Mayor Herron, the reason for that is because the recommendations coming out of that committee include a new policy. And we could have just extracted that from the agenda package, but I think probably I don't want to speak for exactly what the thinking was, but I think the alleged officers felt since that most of the agenda package consisted of that new policy with the redlining and striking out, that it would probably be just as easy to just put the whole agenda package there. Normally that wouldn't happen. Normally there would not be the whole agenda package, because you can imagine if you did that for all of all the advisory committees, that could make for a lot of material. So That's maybe not a very good reason, but that's the reason why.
Okay. So when we get to the EAC recommendation, I have just a question about the funding because I couldn't read the background. So I see Christian is online, so I'll leave it up to you, Chair Jolly, how you want to approach the recommendations.
Sure. So I was just thinking of doing them in order of how they were in our package. So the first one was the arts one. I happen to be the council representative on that committee, so I can speak to that. Unless Ms. Gunn Graham wants to speak to it or someone else, please jump in if I'm missing something. Essentially, the recommendation has to do with the grant policy, the named grant policy that no longer matched up with the bylaw that we approved last year. So the policy said that an external group considers grants, whereas the bylaw says this committee figures out who considers grants. So what the choices that were presented were get rid of the grant for this year, like we did last year. And there was strong opposition to that from, I think, all members. The other option was to leave the policy kind of conflicting with the bylaw and just do the normal thing that we've done in past years to outsource that decision. And then the third option was just to update the policy to match the bylaw. And so the committee would kind of arrange who considers the grant applications. So the ultimate recommendation that came out of there was that we do that housekeeping update of the policy so that it matches the bylaw. But they also recommended that a deep dive into that policy is completed so they can look at kind of the purpose and whether the details of that grant policy kind of match what the intent of the city is. So Katrina, I don't know if you wanted to add to that or if I missed anything there, or Mr. Heltz.
I guess my ultimate question then is, who adjudicates the Young Artist Legacy Grant?
According to the bylaw, it's the Arts Committee that decides who does it. But according to the policy, it's the, Ms. Gunn Graham, if you could remind me of the name of the group.
St. Albert Cultivates the Art Society.
Yes. So the bylaw says something different from the policy.
So why is it coming forward to us in conflict? Oh, because that's what the artists.
They're recommending fixing it so it's no longer in conflict.
Okay. But we're proceeding with the grant for this year.
That's what the committee is recommending.
Okay.
And that we change the policy so that when the grant is considered, it's all matching. So the bylaw and the policy are matching. So there's enough time to get that done because it's the grant.
So it's so option number 2, which was in the minutes. I'm on page 14 of 92. Said proceed with the Young Artist Legacy Award policy change, letting the Arts Development Advisory Committee pick or be the jury endorsed by the Arts Development Advisory Committee. So are they picking a jury or are they the jury? I still don't understand.
They haven't decided yet. So
okay.
That would really, if we want to follow the bylaw, that would be up to the committee to decide that. I don't recall that any decision was made.
Yeah, thank you, if I may, through the chair, that really it was 2 policies that were contradicting each other that needed to be cleaned up. And so because the ADAC committee is so new, they're still working on what their direction is, etc. And so it does simply say that ADAC can choose who the jury is. So they could choose St. Albert Cultivates the Arts if they want. They can choose to have a blended jury. It just was a bit awkward to have 2 policies that were contradicting each other on the books at the same time.
Okay. I mean, not a question, but more commentary. That for me personally, the Arts Development Advisory Committee was born so council had a little bit more control or authority over how art grants and art, public art or whatever was selected in our city. And I feel like if we pass it on again, it's defeating the purpose of the committee. But that's just my commentary.
I commented that as well in our meeting, Mary. So, yeah, that is understood.
So from what I'm hearing is it's going to get cleaned up.
If this committee recommends to council that red line version is accepted. If
Right.
not, the timing, it means we're going to continue to have two policies that contradict each other.
Right. And so if we approve this at council, we're going to see some more changes in the future to the alignment between the bylaw and the policy. And if council at that time doesn't feel that if the original intent of the committee was met, we can say no. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, sorry if I'm still having some issues with my computer program. So just following up on that question, just for further clarification. So there's some, if we approve the recommendation of our committee, they're recommending that it moves forward, yet last year we stopped it because of a pandemic response. So is the intent then, if we approve this, that council is going to move forward with the actual program and funding, regardless of the policy and the selection process? Are we moving forward with actually funding it this year? Would that be the end result?
Well, I can just as a comment, we approve funding in December.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we're just saying we're going to move forward with it. We're just not saying we're going to make a decision in relation to it then. I just want to make sure there's clear clarification and clarity for even the committee members. I'm just saying, so that is, from administration's perspective, is that what Councillor Jolie said? Is that your interpretation too?
Thank you. Through the chair. Yes, the funding is part of the budget, the 2021 budget. Last year, the decision to cancel it was based on the fact that it was very, very early on in the pandemic and not a lot of things were being offered virtually. This year is quite different. There are lots of these opportunities are being offered virtually that the youth may be able to apply for.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the timing. So, I mean, a lot of these artists, though, for example, I mean, wasn't there something in the minutes and the agenda package that suggested that we would have to have that out by April, second quarter of April, so that because most of our young artists use these grants to attend training and the like that occur or may not occur this year. But that's would be my only comment. Like, I mean, we have to get on this by the second or third quarter of April.
Yeah, and perhaps I could ask Andrea Gammon, who is the manager of that area, to weigh in on this.
Yes, through the chair. Yes, that's right. We would need to get it out and advertise it to be able to accept applications and award it in time for people to capitalize on their summer opportunities. So
is there money in the 2021 budget to do that currently right now? Like, yes, I mean, okay, so we haven't taken that money back as part of our recovery efforts for the pandemic response then?
No.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure there was clarity in relation to that.
Yeah, and Councillor Mackay, just in terms of process, so if this committee recommends to council that we update the policy based on the red line version, that can be on the agenda, I assume next week. That's what we usually do, is the week after committee. Once that's approved, I mean, admin could advertise the grant immediately after that.
But then picking up on your earlier conversation with the mayor, will there be enough time to determine like whether or not the committee supports how the policy is going to be determined? Are we running into some time challenges and process challenges here?
No, they already recommended that we accept the red line.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought just from your conversation with the mayor that was still up in the air. Okay, fair enough then. That answers my questions and my concerns in relation to timing.
Great. Councillor Hanson.
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
That's easy. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you. So what is the budget for this grant program? How much are we giving out, I guess, and what is the total budget?
I can answer that. Through the chair, it's $1,400.
So the total annual budget's 1,400. All right. It's a lot of talk for $1,400. The other question, I guess it's Mr. LaFleur. The way this is presented is somewhat confusing in that it would be really helpful if the recommended motions were also included as an option for us to have this, because all I see is the minutes. And then the recommended motions that they're providing aren't the exact wording that we would be using. And it would just be helpful in the future meetings if there's a recommended motion that we're actually supposed to be approving, that it actually comes in recommended motions, so that we're very clear about what the consequences are. Because right now we're just approving minutes, and then it's a separate motion that we're going to have to craft kind of on the spot to address it. And like right now, I look at this basic motion; it looks pretty straightforward. I don't have an issue with it. But but the environmental committee, on the other hand, could have used a backgrounder. And other committees may have other situations where we may be crafting other motions because we may or may not agree with what the committee is recommending. So I think that if we're doing this type of thing on the taking committee recommendations and bringing them forward like this, I think it's going to need a different format, especially as it comes forward for the recommendations. Are we going forward to the environmental one now, Chair Jolly, or are we staying with?
So up to the committee, we could either wrap this up. I just popped into the chat. If we want this to be like the red line version to be on council's agenda next week, this committee would have to pass a motion that recommends to council that we accept the red line version. So we could do that right now. Councilor Mackay is looking confused. I know this is hard. That's my understanding of what we'd have to do. I don't know if Mr. LaFleur, if you could comment on that.
Yes, that's correct. Just as a small procedural point, probably the first motion that should be made would just be to accept all of the minutes of all the committees, of all the as for information. And then when that's out of the way, if you want to go ahead with, for example, the one from the Arts Development Committee, yeah, a motion exactly as you described would be in order, and we can craft that in the chat.
Okay. Sounds good. So on that note, if there's no other questions about the arts recommendation, we can move on to the environmental committee recommendation. I think there are a lot of questions. Is there anyone who could speak to the recommendation? I see Mr. Benson in the room, and Councillor Hanson, I believe you were there. Do we have anyone who can speak to that, just to explain, what it's about?
I'll let you go, Christian.
Hey, good morning, committee. So yeah, the Clean Energy Improvement Program was a priority for our Environmental Advisory Committee, both in 2020 and 2021. The Environmental Advisory Committee received a presentation from the program administrator at the Municipal Climate Change Action Center back in November, and decided to craft some advice for council to proceed with the Clean Energy Improvement Program. So what you're seeing before you today is just the raw recommendation from our Environmental Advisory Committee to consider the adoption or direction to administration to produce a bylaw to help support this program. So as noted, we didn't have a background on this. This just came as advice from our Environmental Advisory Committee. However, we're prepared to present a backgrounder prior to any implementation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hanson, did you want to add anything to that before we go to questions?
Thank you, Chair Jolly. Yeah, further to Christian's remarks, the bylaw is necessary for us to participate in the program or get grant funding. So if we decided not to, approve a recommendation to create a bylaw, then we are not eligible for the funding from the federal agency. So there would be no point in pursuing. That's kind of the big thing that we need to do so that it's not going to affect our bottom line. So the bylaw from that point of view is an important administrative piece.
If I can just supplement Councillor Hansen's notes, as well as it's a little bit counterintuitive the way this program is starting to hit the ground running is to sort of get all the background pieces together and go through the pieces to really provide next step advice to council and the community. We sort of need to set up the bylaw and then keep things going. And then we'll be able to you would theoretically look at having a program up and running by this time next year. So there's quite a bit of work to still have to happen once a bylaw is set up to provide everyone all the information they need for the next steps.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add? Go ahead, Councillor Hansen.
Yeah, thanks. And this is a little bit of a bare bones agenda report because it's really just the motion. But essentially, this is an opportunity for us to participate with other municipalities to have our residents who wish to do so have some clean energy attached to their house, whether that's solar panels, whether that's windows, whether that's actually a variety of things that are typically very expensive for residents to pay up front. So this is a bit of a financing option for them. They pay it through a property tax levy. Important to know that this is not additional debt for our city and does not go as debt load on our city. The city can be the banker, a third party can be the banker. Really, the city just administers through the property tax levy the opportunity for a house owner, and this is not commercial yet, a house owner to be able to upgrade their home for expensive items that they otherwise may not have been able to do. The other great thing about this is that when a house is sold and the program is in place for that house, it just moves to the next owner. So the owner goes in fully knowing that there's an additional property tax levy because they've got solar panels on their house. And that's just, and until that gets paid off, that levy stays with it. So it's Drayton Valley and Rocky Mountain House are full speed ahead on this in Alberta. And I think that they could probably provide us with a lot of the challenges that they may have had to help us move along more smoothly. But at this point in time, we just need to really get the bylaw in place so that we can apply for that money so that we can provide this opportunity for our residents.
Okay, thank you. So for questions, let's start with Mayor Heron and then to Councillor Mackay.
I think my question's been answered. I just had a question on how we're funding this because I thought we were going to be able to apply to the federal government for funding. And then I saw a tax levy, so I got confused. So we need this just to keep the momentum moving forward. We're not actually approving a property tax levy today, obviously, but that's your understanding, Kate? Christian?
Yeah, so what would happen next is if you have a bylaw in place, then you're eligible to apply to FCM for funding. And we basically have that ability. There's a grant portion to it, and then there's a loan portion from FCM as it relates to it. And it goes, we administer the money, and the way the resident pays it back is through what's kind of looked at as a tax levy. So it can't be more than their existing taxes today, so that it doesn't sort of really hit them too hard that they can't manage it. But we administer it on our side. So there's quite a bit of work to figure out. We can build in staffing costs into the grant, et cetera, because we do anticipate there will be an increased load for the city to administer this program. And either way, so whether you go to a standard financial institution or you get the money from FCM, the debt that kind of is holding on all these items that are purchased doesn't go against the city debt. So there's a unique piece with this particular legislation to kind of operate it. Anything I missed, Christian?
No, that's 100% correct, Kate.
Okay, so in the motion, it says the costs initially fronted by the city. So somebody wants to put $20,000 of solar panels on their house. Is the city giving them $20,000? Or is that coming out of an FCM pool of money? That's my confusion.
Good question, Mayor Heron. So
That's always been the problem with PACE right from the very beginning,
yeah,
right?
so I think you understand the program in the sense
yeah.
that if a homeowner does do an energy improvement, so they'll do energy upgrade or they could do something along the lines of solar, the money gets fronted back from the city. The city has this money pool from a lending institution like FCM or a traditional bank, and then the money gets paid back in addition to the interest and admin costs through their tax levy. So you can view it as a local improvement charge to a specific house, and it's over the lifespan of the energy efficiency improvement. So if it's a 20-year or 25-year solar panel installation, that gets paid back to their taxes as a local improvement charge for the life of the installation.
Yeah, I totally get that part. It was just the initial 20 grand
Yep.
to buy the solar panel. So that's not coming out of our capital reserves or anything like that. Coming from either a grant or a lending institution or something else. Perfectly fine with it. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, Councillor Mackay, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I think you asked some of mine because, I mean, I'm obviously confused, and I guess maybe that goes to Councillor Hughes's comments around process, because maybe some of those questions would have been answered in a background or that we would have come to committee. So maybe, I mean, I'm finding this a little clunky, and maybe that's just because I'm old-fashioned.
I would suggest this is the first time, Ken. Sorry, Councillor Mackay. And so maybe Agenda Committee can clean this up for the next round of committee.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I realize, but I mean, this goes to maybe my question. The intent of my question is there's like you asked the cost, but I'm going to ask what are the internal costs to set up like the impact of the bylaw would have on administration, and who does it come out of Christian's area, or would it come out of tax assessment area? How is, I mean, and again, the devil's in the details, and that would probably come in a backgrounder, but so, I mean, you know, these are the notes that I've made. So first question, and I got a follow up is so you asked the specific costs, but are there, who administers this within the city?
So that's a really good question, Councillor Mackay. And part of the next step pieces is really to figure out the soft costs, the people costs. We are eligible to use some of the grant funding that we would get from FCM towards the administrative costs. So there's a portion that allows for that. Our best guess right now is we figure it's about a half FTE of contracted services. So about that incidental value that we would be splitting between assessment and environment based on some of the pieces that would be happening on either side. But like I said, it's a bit of a clunky program in the sense that we need the bylaw first to continue to work through all the details with MCCAC, who's the administrator and has all of the data and metrics to supply back to the municipality of how much that's going to cost and what they're eligible to recover from.
All right. So how much would a municipality be eligible for? Because I mean, I would imagine, I mean, it might start off slow, but then as more and more people move or adopt this technology, like are we getting ourselves into some kind of a situation where we don't have the money to cover? We basically only get, I don't know, $100,000 from the FCM, or like, what's the maximums, or do we know that yet?
Yes, Councillor Mackay. So the city of St. Albert actually has worked with the MCCAC, and I think probably the best thing for us to do is either to slot or produce as an agenda package a market study that was produced in the last 2 months. So the market study and a bylaw are the two necessary pieces for this program to take place in Alberta. We have completed a market study at no cost to the city with the MCCAC. It projects a 4-year program implementation, total costs, staffing implications to the city. It's very comprehensive. It's a very large report. So I think that's all the information probably council will be looking for. In addition, I'd be happy to reach out to the MCCAC to actually come forward with a presentation as the administrator of the program and the subject matter expert to answer questions related to anything with future program implementation, debt load, possible costs to the city. But it is designed to be as low cost as possible, almost no impact to the city administrative levels.
Fair enough. Councillor Hanson had identified 2 communities in Alberta that are somewhat going forward with this, or potentially anyways. Is this Canada-wide?
So this legislation, Bill 10, was passed in Alberta in 2018. It is Alberta specific. There are PACE programs in Canada that are already in place, both in Toronto and other eastern and maritime provinces. So it is designed in Canada right now to be a residential program, and that's what's been in place for a number of years in other provinces. So yeah, it's in Alberta. It was mentioned both the town of Devon and Rocky Mountain have bylaws in place. In addition to that, Leduc has received their first reading of their bylaw. City of Edmonton has a bylaw and funding already ready from the FCM, and we are seeing other jurisdictions within our region and our province already adopting this bylaw. So certainly we're not a leader in this. We are a little bit back of where a few other municipalities are in Alberta.
Well, sometimes we can build off of that, take advantage of that. Actually, I don't have a problem with that. I am concerned a little bit, I guess, in relation to, you know, we're coming out of a pandemic, and what's the impact going to be on our staff and our ability to actually get this up and running and administer it. And so I would hope that that would be somewhat addressed in the backgrounder, because you know, we've certainly heard in the last little while some of the pressures that are put on staff. So I would wish if you could put that in the backgrounder when it comes to council. I would appreciate that.
Yeah, certainly, Councillor. And I should note too that the benefit to this program really is on the municipal level and economic development opportunity as well. The initial information we've received from the market study report is a positive $17 million impact and a large 70-ish person plus new job creation as a result through this program. So you can really see it as an aid to the recovery of post-COVID activities rather than an impact to the municipality.
I'm fantastic. And again, that goes to, I wish I had that in the backgrounder, and then I wouldn't have had all these questions, and I maybe not have some concerns. Sorry. Fantastic. As usual, Christian, thank you.
Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Thank you. So let me just is there a maximum amount that we'll be able to get from the FCM? And how do they determine how much you're getting?
Thanks, Councillor Hughes. So there is a calculation that the FCM has through the funding model. What we've projected for the city of St. Albert over a 4-year period is up to $5 million. So that would be the max limit. And there is a maximum per year that we're identifying. So in addition to the maximum per household, there is also a maximum we would be leveraging per year. So the design of this program really is to be for the first 4 years of the program, and that's where the funding model takes place. And after which we can decide whether we want to return back to a traditional lender or if we wanted to end the program after that period. But the market study does a great job of identifying projects per year, average cost per project, and the funding limit that St. Albert would be associated with for our design of our program.
The 5 million, is it debt or is it grants? It's debt, right?
The $5 million comes as a lending from the city, so it's recoverable through residents, but there is also a 50% additional grant available through FCM, and that's why it's so attractive to do SEEP through FCM. So we would be asking for an estimated $5 million, and I see Diane's on the call, so maybe I'll get her to clarify because she did work with MCCAC on this. But in addition to that borrowing amount, they provide an opportunity for a 50% additional grant. So we'd be looking at grant money that could cover costs of the program, design of the program. A portion goes to MCCAC for administration of the program, and we could even look at other grants that would help low income or energy poverty residents as a part of this program. So the grant aspect is the most attractive for St. Albert, and that's why you're seeing such a high uptake of other municipalities in the province right off the hop, is because it's there's limited money through FCM, and you have to kind of get in line for this type of funding.
So, but the grant money isn't to reduce the cost of the items for the residents. It would be for us for administration. Yes.
You could design the grant to be accommodate some. You could have like an energy efficiency portion of the grant. So what the city of Edmonton has done is they've used a portion of their grant to pay for an energy home evaluation, and that's the first step of the design of their program. So you have a qualified expert comes in, they do an evaluation, they identify what areas are the highest requirements for energy efficiency for your household, and they're using a portion of their grant to pay for this in its entirety. So they're covering $450 for that initial home evaluation. And then they have different levels through both their Home Energy Retrofit Accelerator, HERA program, and through this grant to accommodate for the residents themselves using federal money to pay for home efficiency increases to their household. So portion of grant funding can go to the residents as well.
Okay. And all of that would be somehow flushed out in the next year, right, Kate? Yeah.
That's correct. So we would take the next kind of 6 months or so to get things sorted so that we are ready to go for this time next year when the grant funding would come into the city, everything being successful.
Okay. So what happens if, and I realize it's 5 millions over 4 years is what, 1/4 a year, but what if the amount of requests exceeds that? Do we have do we just say we're stopping applications at this point because it's full? Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what City of Edmonton has designed their program to look like as well. They have a maximum threshold per year. So it's kind of first come, first serve, and they have an administrator to their program as well. So if they reach their threshold, let's call it like 50 projects per year, which would be around St. Albert's total, at that point, then it's cut off until the next year. So we're not anticipating to run through the whole cost of the program within the first year. It's designed to be 4 years.
Okay. And then how do you determine who supplies or how does anyone determine who actually supplies the items that they're going to do? So let's say I want solar panels. Do I have to go through a approved solar panel at their prices, or can I get my own solar panels, send you a copy of the receipt, and we're good to go?
Great question. And this is the value that the Municipal Climate Change Action Center provides, is they're the ones doing the vetting of the contractors. The contractors have to reach an agreement within the MCCAC to provide the service as an approved contractor. So if you're looking at solar panels in this example, you have solar panel providers go through the training and go through the vetting process by MCCAC. They become an approved contractor, and they at that point they're aware of the cost of the program. There's an established set of criteria that they have to meet. So it's not just one-offs to any contractor that wants to apply for the program. You have to be an approved contractor to take part of this.
And if I can just supplement that, their intention is to have local contractors approved as much as possible. So like I'll call it a microcosm, so that we're not getting installers from Calgary or whatnot supporting our community. So that's the intention, is to have local contractors, suppliers that are eligible to do this work. They sign a contract with MCCAC in terms of the workmanship, in terms of what they will be providing the specific resident and the specific project, that they have to meet those terms and conditions. Very similar to how a contractor would sign a contract with us when they do a capital project. So it is comprehensive, and that is it is that to protect the resident and ensure they're getting the service that they're signing up for.
Okay. I have another question, and I'm thinking of it, or didn't write it down, which is just great. Okay, so I'm a resident. That's a statement actually, but let's pretend I'm just the average resident. Okay, so I'm going to go do this. And I'm trying to figure out where the benefit is for me, because if I did it myself, I have control over the costs, whereas the MCAC costs, because they have to jump through hoops, it's very probable that it'll be higher. And then I have to also pay interest, and I have to pay for admin costs. So I don't see how doing this would actually save me money. I'm trying to see the benefit for the actual residents doing this.
I'm actually really glad you asked that question, Councillor Hughes, because from a resident perspective, if you're a homeowner, one of the biggest barriers to energy efficiency improvements and energy generation projects like solar is your thought of how long you're going to stay in a household. So the true benefit is, number one, it's comparable or lower than your traditional lending stream. So if you're going to do a home improvement, you have to either get a line of credit or work through your lending institution to add to your mortgage, or so that process in itself is a difficult barrier for a lot of people. So this is an easier approval process for these types of improvements. Also, the amortization over the length or the life of the loan is a lot longer. So if you go to your lending institution and say, I want to pay back my solar panels over the course of 25 years, you're probably not going to get your line of credit. You can over the lifespan of your improvement through this type of program, and it is a much lower cost per month for you on your tax bill than it would be through paying to a traditional institution. So it is really beneficial in the lending sense, but ultimately it's it's a barrier removal for someone who doesn't necessarily picture themselves in their home for 25 years. If you're making these large scale improvements, you want to know that you're not having a sunk cost. So for myself, I live in an older house in Grandin. I have a growing family. My wife's actually 9 months pregnant, so we may be looking for a bigger home right now. We also are looking at things like energy improvement and energy generation, so new windows, new solar panels, and to get over that mental barrier, potentially you would enter into a SEED program so you can make those improvements, automatically start realizing the cost savings through this program. And then when you do go to sell your house, the next homeowner realizes the benefit of those improvements, but also takes on the implication of the small payment through your tax base. So it's one of those things that it's proven through PACE programming in the States and as well as in some jurisdictions in Canada that it does remove a lot of that mental barrier and some of the other financial barriers to making these huge improvements or even small scale improvements to your household.
Right, that's a good answer. So the other thing, the admin costs. So we figure it's half an FTE. How many people do we need to actually be uptaking this before it will actually, the grant amount will pay for the admin costs?
So right now we have estimated around 56 projects for the first year, and then it slowly builds up. I think one of our intentions, and Kate and I had this conversation, is we want to closely track the hours for the first year of the program. So if the uptake is a lot greater than we anticipated, or if it's less, we want to make an adjustment to the requirement of a contracted service for an admin cost. So if it's only a 0.3 that we really need to help with our taxation and our assessment group, or even the application intake, we want to make that adjustment in year 2. So if we came forward with funding for this program for administrative costs, we certainly would use the first year as a guide for us, and then we would adjust in the years following. So high level, what we estimated through conversations with the MCCAC is to have absolutely no impact to your current staffing levels. We're proposing potentially a 0.5 FTE contract service, and then we were looking to adjust in the next years depending on uptake.
So we need about 50 people, because you said like basically we have a budget for around 50 people, right? So we need it to be maxed out to pay for our admin costs for the first year.
The admin cost gets covered through the funding and the grant. So if it's a little less than anticipated, then it still gets covered. It's not like it's directly tied to the per project, but I think what we would do as administration is we would certainly look to adjust our programming if their uptake was less or greater than anticipated. So there's no threshold that we would provide estimates through this funding stream. And if we didn't get where we thought we would adjust in the second year.
So just to supplement that, Councillor Hughes, because I think you're still trying to get at what you're looking for. We provide our total market study to FCM when we look to get our total funding package for the 4-year window. We wouldn't be reapplying. And with that is just the standard grant portion of that total piece that we get to pull into the city account, which we can start pulling from when needed. And that should cover that beginning piece so that we have money to pay for our bills on day one, in essence.
What if we don't use, because you said, okay, we have 5 million, basically we'll call it line of credit type thing. Then we have another 2.5 million that we're going to be able to get from grants. What if we don't use up the full 5 million though? Like what if there isn't actually uptake for the full amount of the program? And then we basically got forwarded grants that we may have to refund part of it. Would that be correct? Or how would that work? Because we don't know for sure we're going to kick all the money out.
Yeah, so through the terms and condition of the FCM grant, and I would rely on MCCAC for a specific answer, but my assumption is anything we don't use, it's like it'd be a bank loan for a person. If you don't use the full amount of your bank loan, either you just repay it at the end of the 4-year term, or you can continue on depending on the success of the program. So it's my understanding that if you used 4 out of the 5 million, we have no use and want to discontinue the program after 4 years, we would just return that 1 million back as a form of payment to the lending from the FCM.
Well, the 1.5 million, because we have that grant. Okay, so what I'm also thinking, just one of your arguments for you too, is that as in theory, if let's say we had 30 the first year, but the following year we had another 30, then you actually have passed the threshold of what you need to pay for the admin costs. So one of the things that also needs to be flushed out is what do you do when the amount of grant money exceeds the amount of admin costs? Because at some point you actually might have it where, I don't know if it's going to be that you reduce the number, but then also the grant just is going to have more money than what you need, I guess. So that has to be kind of figured out what you do the extra cash. The other last.
Can I just jump in? It sounds like we're really getting into the details that we would be looking at.
Well,
when Mr. Benson provides a backgrounder, is this information that you need to know to kind of consider the EAC's recommendation?
To me, yeah. I mean, this is when we're talking about taking on more debt and putting on a program, I think, and again, if we'd had a background and had all the presentation that EAC had, it might be a different story, but we don't have it. And so this is just what I wanted to know. I don't want residents to get worried, because when I see the words property tax bylaw, like, it causes flutters. So I think we need to have people understand what it is, and the Gazette's going to be reporting on this. And I want to make sure they understand what we're doing and that it's been properly thought through. I only had one more question.
No, Councillor Hanson, maybe you can clarify. So my understanding of this recommendation is that we consider this bylaw at council. Is that kind of high level what the recommendation is? Okay.
Yeah, today is just about a bylaw, and of course you have to have the debate in council whether you want to go forward with this bylaw. So this is just taking EAC's recommendation as information, and I think, Mr. LaFleur, we approve this so that it automatically comes to the next, I don't know, maybe the bylaw comes, I'm not sure, next week or the the motion to approve a bylaw, I don't know when that comes to council.
So if you're going to take a recommendation to council, as we've heard a couple of times, there'll be a backgrounder there. There won't be a bylaw yet. Council will have to approve going forward with the bylaw. And this is a fairly complex bylaw. Legal will be involved in drafting it, right? Because there are several moving parts to it. Will be involved, and of course Christian will be involved as well. So it's going to be a little while before all of this comes together, if this committee gives a general direction to go with this. Okay.
Yeah, so this is today, Councillor Jolly. This is really just to get the thumbs up from committee to take this to council to approve going forward with a bylaw.
Yeah. And that won't necessarily be the next council meeting. It may take Christian longer to do a really, we're sensing as administration, we've been sort of chatting that we're sensing that for something like this, the committee would have appreciated a much more fulsome sort of bit of information about this than what came out of the advisory committee, which is fine. But that won't happen like overnight. So it will come to a future council meeting if you approve doing that. Basically when the agenda planning process says that will happen.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Hughes, I mean, if you still have a kind of general question about, go ahead.
I had one left, and I still think that we're a vetting community, and I'm trying to vet. Devon and the other community that already has the bylaw in place, when did they sign that?
I had Rocky Mountain, I'm not sure, but the town of Devon actually brought it in last year. They were the first municipality in the province to pass a SEEP bylaw. And sorry, go ahead.
And just what was the uptake on it so far? Do you know?
They just passed it. They're in a similar space as us. So the FCM just opened up funding for the grant. So they have their program a little further ahead in the design, and they have their bylaws. So they're likely first in line to receive FCM funding for their type of program. And of course, in the news, you've heard City of Edmonton did receive preemptive funding from FCM for the design of their program as well.
But have we had any residents take it up?
Well, so I guess what you're saying is, so they are just about, so a year later, they're just about ready to start taking residents in and getting that uptake. So they don't have a metrics yet to provide that last year yet.
Alrighty, just curious. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking around the room. If there are no other questions, I know Mr. LaFleur, you wanted to get to the approval of all the minutes first, but Mayor Herron's volunteered.
You know what? I have to leave.
You have to leave? Okay.
Yeah, I got an interview for Women's Day at 10:30, and I need to, so I'm sure it'll go fine. It has my support for both the youth grant and 100% support for the SEEP grant. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, Mayor Herron.
Bye.
Okay, so are there any other questions in the room? So it sounds like we've got kind of three potential motions on the floor, depending on how the committee wants to do it. The first one, and Mr. LaFleur, please correct me. The first one is approving or accepting all of the minutes from committees as information.
Correct.
The second one, if we choose to do it, is to recommend to council that the red line version of the arts policy is approved. And then the third one is that we recommend to council that this environmental program is considered. Is that correct, Mr. LaFleur?
Basically, yes. The second motion, the one that came out of the Arts Committee, is actually in the chat now, if anybody wants to have a look at that one. The one that would come out of the Environmental Advisory Committee is essentially exactly word for word what came out of the Advisory Committee. So that could be put in the chat.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I get the impression that we want to split these three. Yes? No? We can keep them all together? Okay. Does anyone want to volunteer kind of to move all three? So the one in our package, and then Cheryl's put the arts one in the chat, and hopefully and then the environmental one is exactly how it is in our package. Is that right? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Hughes.
Okay, I figured since I took up so much time with questions, I will make this go fast, okay? So that the Youth Advisory Committee unadopted minutes of the February 3rd meeting, the Community Services Advisory Committee unadopted minutes of the January 26th, 2021 meeting, the Arts Development Advisory Committee unadopted minutes of the February 24th, 2021 meeting, including the associated material, and the agenda package material for the Seniors Advisory Committee unadopted minutes of the February 25th, 2021 meeting, and Environmental Advisory Committee unadopted minutes of the February 25th, 2021 meeting be received as information. That the Community Living Setting Committee recommend to Council that the Young Artist Legacy Grant proceed to for 2021, and that the changes to the Young Artist Legacy Program policy, redlined version presented in option 2, and that the policy be reviewed again in prior to 2022. And that the Community Living Setting Committee recommend to Council that to bring forward the Clean Energy Improvement Tax Bylaw under the Part 10, Division 6.1 of the Municipal Government Act, and a motion to authorize the CEO to take necessary steps to establish a clean energy improvement program in order to give interested and qualifying St. Albert property owners the opportunity to make clean energy improvements to their properties, thereby reducing. Is it really all of that motion? Sorry, I'm reading it out of the programmer, and I'm sorry, just give me 1 second here, because I just want to make sure I don't screw you up on this. Okay, can I change that last motion to that hold on. Did it actually, sorry, I'm really sorry, Councilor, Chair Jolly, I thought I had it right. Did I have it right and I'm screwing it up? Because I don't see it here in the minutes.
I think we have it in the chat apart.
I'm looking in the chat, sorry. I'm missing the one I'm just gonna read the whole thing.
Okay.
To finish with that, thereby reducing St. Albert's carbon footprint for which the costs initially funded by the city are paid or reimbursed over time through the annual special purposes property tax levy. Just reading the whole thing as is.
Thank you. I feel like we've already talked this to death, but do you have any comments?
No, I feel we've vetted everything appropriately. I feel comfortable moving this forward.
Councilor Mackay, anything?
No, I think we vetted it through, and I'm not going to rehash some of the comments and around having a background, even though I just did.
All right, so I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Excellent. Okay, thank you, everyone. Next up is the Municipal Historic Conservation Program Policy updates. And we've got Ms. Brooks. Go ahead.
Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen, so if it doesn't work, let me know. Okay. All right. So good morning. I am here today to give a brief overview of the changes to the Municipal Historic Conservation Policy. We recommend that the updated policy as attached be approved. Computer problems. To give you some background, in September of last year, the Heritage Advisory Committee bylaw was repealed, which put in motion changes that affected the MHE policy. The changes to the bylaw include removal of reference to the Heritage Advisory Committee and the addition of Arts and Heritage as a partner, expanded definitions and explanations of duties required by the AHF, and changes to the funding model. We have reduced the funding to 75 cents per capita for the program. The funding would remain at 75 cents per capita if we received 3 or more applications in the previous year. However, if we received 2 or less applications in the previous year, the amount per capita would further be reduced to 20 cents. The main reason for reducing the amount of funding is the uptake from the community has been slow. However, we want to ensure that once the program finds footing in the community, that we have enough money and reserves to be able to support conservation grants. We currently have just over $183,000 in reserves. The reduction of funding to 75 cents per capita takes the program to approximately about $48,000 per year, and at 20 cents per capita takes it to about $13,000 per year. Administration is responsible for the distribution of information about the program, providing support and resources for the AHF when applications are submitted, ensuring program standards are met, developing processes for designation, and presenting designation bylaws to Council for review. Additionally, administration will maintain documentation of all historic properties. The Arts and Heritage Foundation of St. Albert is responsible for submitting a heritage management plan to Council every 3 years, reviewing applications for designation and conservation, and assisting homeowners in the process. The AHF will present any applications for designation to Council and provide advice on any applications to alter an existing historic place. The AHF will also regularly review and update the places of interest list and heritage inventory. And finally, we'll apply on behalf of owners to be registered on the Alberta Registry once they are designated with us. Once a property is designated, a plaque will be installed on the property, and that property will be inspected every 5 years by the AHF. That is the end of my presentation today. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I feel like we've been talking about this for years. I have nothing. But Councillor Mackay can start off with questions. And if you could unshare your screen so we could see everyone, that would be great.
All right, I'm just trying to stop. There we go.
Go ahead, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chair. And I apologize for moving around. I'm having trouble with getting access. It seems like my computer is acting up, but I apologize. I'm wondering in relation to the uptake. I mean, I believe we've asked this question before, even when it was the bylaw was somewhat different and we didn't have arts and heritage involved directly. But why do you believe that there's such a slow uptake in this? Is there a lack of an inventory, or is there not an understanding of the requirements, or lack of advertising? What would you say the reason is?
Thank you, Councillor McKay. Good question. I think it's a combination of perhaps not the promotion for this program possibly could be a bit more. We could promote it a bit more, and I think there's not a lot of properties on the list, so that could be another reason as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at our total, what we have about 183,000, a little bit more than 183,000 in the reserve. I mean, you know, do you anticipate that there's going to be the uptake? I mean, you know, we already have it in there that we're going to go 75 or 20, but maybe we don't even need to even have that much until we start to actually get an uptake. So I don't even know. So is it complicated? Because we do have the one, and there was some figures in there in your presentation around $6,100 that were, what would a resident use that money for? Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, absolutely. There are two different kinds of grants. So there's a $25,000 one-time grant that the homeowner can apply for conservation. So be it windows or improvements to the house to make it more efficient. The $7,500 is another grant stream, which is a one-time per year cost, basically to maintain what they've done. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess it's just around what the money would be used for and how it's used. I mean, and if it's enough, because I don't know. I mean, I would imagine trying to maintain your house to the standards that are required under the bylaw would be expensive. And maybe residents just don't see that it's worth the effort or their own personal costs. So I'm just trying to seek out answers as to potentially what the concerns would be. That's all. So I guess it was more of a rhetorical question, I guess, Townsend. Thanks. That's my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation, Townsend. And I'm just going to harken back a little bit to the last days of the Heritage Advisory Committee. They were very disappointed. I'll just put it out there that the committee was repealed. They felt that they did have a lot of work to do. I think innately they understood that this was probably better to be taken under the Arts and Heritage Foundation. But they had gone even to the trouble of creating some social media pages to highlight some of our heritage homes on a constant basis, to sort of promote why you might want to consider calling your home historical. And they were trying very hard as volunteers to do this. And I'm not sure that we as a city have been super helpful in that area. It's just just so many things going on. This maybe hasn't been a priority. So the promotion, I think, really does have to happen if we want to increase our inventory of historical houses, and we want people to understand that the program is out there. I really think that a lot of people don't even know that. So 75 cents or 20 cents, I think it really depends on us putting it out there and letting people chew on the whole prospect as it is. But I just wanted to say thanks to the Heritage Advisory Committee for the work that they were trying to do. I hope that the uptake is still at AHF, and I wondered, Townsend, if it's going to be the AHF board that takes this on, or are they going to have some kind of a subcommittee where they could bring in some of those folks from the previous Heritage Advisory Committee to, because these guys were, this is what they did for a living in their personal lives. So they were experts in the field. It would be terrible if we lost them. So I guess I want to know, is there a place for them going forward under AHF? And is the plans under AHF to promote this program a little bit more?
Katrina, do you want to take this, or?
Sure. It's easier when you're in person to kind of signal each other who's going to take which question, isn't it? I did speak to AHF last week, and they talked about engaging with the past members of the committee, and that they definitely see a role for them. We do recognize that we need to have more promotion. I think Tamsin would know the exact number, but there's over 30 buildings in St. Albert that would be eligible for this funding. So with promotion, we hope that there'll be bigger uptake. And the way that we did the funding formula, if we do get 3 or more a year, that would be potentially $75,000 just for their initial 25 each. Our formula has 48,000. So we calculated so that we would be reducing the reserve, so that the reserve would not just continue to build. And again, our hope is with increased promotion that more people will see the value of being part of this program.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Hughes or Councillor Watkins? Councillor Hughes, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I would have let Ray go first if I saw his hand up. So it's 25,000 capital for the first thing and 7,500 every year after that. That's what you said for the numbers, correct? Okay, 30 properties that could be eligible. So right now in our war chest, we have enough to supply 7 properties, like really at least 6, even if we have the extra going on for the funding for the 7.5. I'm trying to come to terms with the idea of still putting in 75 cents per capita. I mean, we're still looking at close to $50,000 a year into a program that's had 0 uptake, and we have a cushion of 7 properties that we can get started on. I think I share Councillor Mackay's thoughts that until this number actually, until the reserves actually start going down to where it's actually a concern, I'm not really sure why we would justify continuing to put $50,000 or more a year into this program. So I'm where are you coming back with your numbers? Because I just don't see, I realize that you say 50,000 small in a total budget, but we're
Well, I
putting
think that's why, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that's why we have the 20 cents option, which is about $13,000 a year. It kind of strikes a balance between trying to be cognizant of not overinflating this reserve, but also to ensure that the program does continue if we do have uptake once we start promotion.
Okay. And then in your presentation, you mentioned the $151 for one application pending. So are we paying for the land use bylaw changes in this program?
No, that's just an internal transfer between culture and planning.
Okay, so do we have somebody who's actually applied then? Is that when I see one application pending, we have somebody who has applied? So we have the potential to use up $25,000.
Correct.
And how long do you think that will take to go through the system?
That is a very good question, Councillor Hughes. With all the redistricting and the land bylaw, it's about 6 to 8 months.
When did they apply? Was it recently or?
They applied earlier in 2020. I'm going to say September.
Okay, so sometime in the next few months in theory. Okay. I was just trying to figure out those two things. I think that's it for now, but I'm still struggling with the amount of money we're still putting into this program because we just haven't seen the uptake to justify it, but that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. I don't really have any questions, but I would echo Councillor Hughes and Councillor Mackay's concerns about, we have this pot of money that is more than sufficient to deal with uptake. So I don't know what the appetite would be to recommend to council that we update the policy, but for 2021 and 2022, we suspend funding and then review that again in 2 years. Just to throw that out there. Because from what I understand, we have enough money to kind of get us through the next year unless something really strange happens. Is that?
Yeah, no, I think I support that. I mean, as long as, I guess I just looking at administration, I guess we could just make that recommendation at committee and then it would come back to council. So there you go. I answered my own question, Chair.
Chair, what I was thinking, and just throwing this out there, is what if there's some kind of, okay, there, it was him making that whistling noise. What if it was that once the balance hit a certain number, then it would kick in? So what if it was like, if it fell below 100,000 in the pot, then we would do a per capita of 50 cents per capita, for example. And if it fell below a certain other number, it would require review for the funding amount. So that way we would actually, it would never fall to zero before it was reviewed. But that, because personally, I think if it falls to, let's say, $100,000, that's still a very hefty amount in there. And then at that point, let's say it fell to 99,000, it would hit a 50 per capita. So you'd be throwing another 30,000 right into there again to give you a cushion. I think that might be a way to address it, because I think that we can put this on hiatus for a lot longer before that money is going to hit a dangerous level. So I don't know how you guys feel about that, but
I would support that. I also like it because it doesn't require council to review it in a couple of years, because there's a trigger within the bylaw.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that, Councillor McKay?
Yeah, no, I like the trigger. I was just trying to think that if we provided something back to administration so that they could bring it to council in relation to what was just said, the concern over the actual current number that's in our reserve, and then making sure that we have enough trigger. I just don't know the process in relation to it. If all of a sudden we get a crazy uptake, will we be flexible and adaptable enough to be able to respond? But I think, like you've identified, we've had how many years of we've actually got our first one in a long time, if ever, from my involvement, and we've got some wiggle room in there, even if somehow we magically got 2 or 3, we would still be able to identify. But as long as we had some sort of a cushion or a trigger point that that'd be covered. So I like your suggestion of maybe addressing that. So I'm not sure how we would put that in a motion though, Chair. So
I have a suggested motion I can forward. I can read it to you and then I can forward it, for you to think about, which is that if we were to amend the policy to include that if the program reserve had a balance of 100,000 or greater as of December 31st of that calendar year, that the annual funding available is allocated to zero. So nothing. And then if the reserve has a less than 100,000 December 31st, the amount of annual funding is determined by multiplying the per capita at the most recent census by 50 cents. And that if the reserve has a balance of less than 60,000 as of December 31st, that then the policy and funding contribution is brought before council for review. So, because and at that point, we could say we'll do an injection of 50,000 or something. That council would have that decision. It wouldn't be our problem. And but I think that would give us a bit of a parameters. I can forward that.
Yeah, that's great. Ms. McBordy, can you comment on that? It looks like you've got your hand up.
No, the only thing I would suggest is that we set a date at potentially June 30th as opposed to December, because then we can meld it into our budget process for that following year.
Councilor Mackay, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to be quick. I mean, we're just to make sure we're clarifying that we're amending policy. This isn't in bylaw somewhere though, right? We're not having to amend the bylaw, correct? Okay, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Okay, so I've sent it now, and I've sent it to Ledger Services as well, so that they have an idea of what was done. But I thought that might be a way to address the problem of pouring money into a program that's not having a serious uptake for depletion. And I don't get a copy of it when it gets sent to you guys, so I don't know if you got it or not, but.
I got it, and I just popped it into the chat, so Diane and everyone else can see that as well. So I'm not seeing any concerns with that. So you've already read it, you've amended it to June 30th.
Yeah.
There are no other questions. I'm looking to Councillor Hanson, Councillor Watkins. No, I'll accept that.
So what I'm wondering is, should we just have Councillor Mackay bring forward the main motion and then the amendment would be brought forward? Because the rest of it's still going forward for the HF. Because we still want the HF to go.
Yeah, did you want to do that, Councillor Mackay? And then this could
be so basically, because I mean, I know Ledge just put in a suggested motion that has been slightly modified. It's in our chat.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting to make sure you've reviewed that and so I would move it. Oh, sorry. I'm having trouble again with my computer here. I apologize. I can make the motion and let me know if I go too far in relation to where you want me to stop. That the Community Living Standing Committee recommend to Council that the revisions to policy C-CS-21 municipal historic conservation provided as an attachment to the March 8th, 2021 agenda report titled Municipal Historic Conservation Program Policy be approved.
And then I don't know, if you want me to just reread it or just say so moved as the changes in the chat. It's the same intention. I think we just changed it to allocated to zero per capita. So
yeah, you can. So
I can read it if you'd like.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So this is the amendment to Councillor Mackay's motion. Go ahead.
Yes. The Municipal Historic Conservation Policy is amended as follows: that if the Municipal Historic Conservation Program Reserve has a balance of 100,000 or greater as of June 30th of that calendar year, the annual funding contribution available for the program is allocated at $0 per capita. That if the reserve amount has a balance of less than 100,000 as of June 30th of that calendar year, the amount of annual funding available for the program is determined by multiplying the city's population as determined by the most recent census by 50 cents. That if the Municipal Historic Conservation Program Reserve has a balance of less than 60,000 as of June 30th that calendar year, the Municipal Historic Conservation Program Policy and annual funding contribution is brought before Council for review.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any concerns with that, so I'll accept that amendment. Any comments before we vote?
I think this is a way to stop putting money into a program until it actually has uptake to justify having more money being put into it. And I realize that we're looking at hopefully coming out of the end of this pandemic, but the financial ramifications of it are continuing. So I think that this still needs to be a tight budget year, especially as we start moving forward to make sure that those tax increases are as little as possible and every dollar is going to count. That's it.
Thank you. Anything for you, Councilor Mackay?
Yeah, only in the sense that I would want this policy to actually work. I mean, I would love to see this actually start to be utilized by residents that are on that inventory list of properties that would actually take advantage of this. So I'm not sure how we engage with those residents, but I would actually love to have this fund being utilized and some of our properties maintained. I think that was the intent of the original bylaw. And I think there is an opportunity, but because it's not being used right now, I just don't see, and I agree with Councillor Hughes's opening comments. And I shared them initially when I looked at the actual total amount of the reserve. And I thought that until we actually do get the uptake, that this is a good response, so.
Hear, hear. Councillor Hughes, anything to close? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, that amendment is unanimous. Mr. LaFleur, you kind of understand the intent behind all of this?
Well, I was just going to say that the additional verbiage that Councillor Hughes put in is not in the same format, you know, as you would normally see, like strike out these words, add these words. We'll have to kind of figure out where to put them in, but that's okay because it's all coming to council anyway, right? So we'll do that at some point before it comes to council, and we'll be sure that the intent is faithfully captured.
Thank you so much, Mr. LaFleur. All right, so back to the main motion. Did you want to add anything else, Councillor Mackay?
No, nothing.
Okay, Councillor Hughes.
I'm looking forward to having this pass on to the HF. I think their expertise is going to be well served on this.
Well said. Thank you. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. Well, let me double check our.
I just have one more thing I want to add if you're going to adjourn.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
I just want to recognize that this is a special day. It's International Women's Day. And I mean, today and every day, I want to make sure that I'm going to speak on behalf of Ray and all the other men on this Zoom call. I'm going to take that on. And I just want to thank all of my female colleagues, both on council and administration, for your contribution, your service to our community, your strong leadership, and your continual breaking down of all the barriers for those who follow. So I just want to make sure I recognize that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are a lot of women in this room right now.
Yeah, and thank you for everything you guys do.
All right, which brings us to adjournment. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you this afternoon. Take care. Meeting adjourned.